Hey everyone, it's Sam Robinson again here at bookkeepers.com, and today we are joined again by our lovely friend Heidi Ryder of Keepful. Heidi, obviously, for those of you who know, some of you may not know, Heidi used to work with us at bookkeepers.com and Keepful, and then when Jaime acquired bookkeepers.com, Heidi acquired Keepful. So now she's still a good friend of ours, and we're having her on. This is the second time she's been on Partner Picks, and today we'll be going over how one can get leads and do so through Keepful. But just give the audience, in case that they're new to this, Heidi, a little background on yourself and how you got into Keepful.
So I am a mom to four. That's my favorite job title. When I found out I was pregnant with my first, I needed to do something from home. And so that's how I found Bookkeeper Launch. Went through the course, started a successful business, and then went to work for what was Ben at the time. And then, of course, Jaime and I worked together, and then Sam and I worked together. And we just kind of became a family, right? Big, happy family. But then when we started Keepful as the company, that was kind of my specialty, my department, because I started using it in my business, really found how powerful it could be, and wanted to share that with other bookkeepers and accountants. So I kind of just pushed myself over into that side of the business. And then, like Sam said, when Jaime was acquiring Bookkeepers, I was able to acquire Keepful. So now I own it, run it. I have Kelly G still on my team. She's a phenomenal support. And we just really love helping bookkeepers and accountants with their marketing and their automation in their businesses.
Amen. And I feel like with you and Jaime both, y'all were like the two model students for Bookkeeper Launch. And one of the things that helped y'all be so successful in your businesses is the fact that y'all did such a good job at finding clients. That's what we're talking about today, lead generation. And I think that it's good to have you on here, not only because you know how software like Keepful works to help people optimize their lead acquisition, but you've also done it yourself as a bookkeeper. So walk us through what it was like for you starting off your bookkeeping business and finding clients.
Terrifying. I think that can resonate with a lot of people. It is very scary. And so I would say the biggest hurdle that you want to overcome is going to be in your mind. It really is. And getting out there and doing the things that are scary. For me, I found my first client by just calling up friends. And then once I kind of got that ball rolling, got that first paycheck coming in, then it was word of mouth referrals. It was networking. It was LinkedIn. And that's still where I get a lot of mine, LinkedIn and strategic partnerships and word of mouth referrals. And so it kind of like it started in person for me and then just kind of started shifting where now I don't go to any networking events. Definitely am not still calling up my friends asking for clients anymore.
And I think that's encouraging too, because it lets people know that if you do it right, especially at the start, that you don't necessarily have to be so, I would say, proactive and having to constantly go in person to place. There's a time for that in one's business, but that's really at the beginning, especially if you're, like you said, reaching out to friends, doing strategic partnerships, utilizing LinkedIn. Now, what has your experience been like on LinkedIn? Because that's one of those platforms that I think is, for a lot of people, a buzzword more than a reality in terms of finding clients. I think that it sounds good for a lot of people, but then there's a struggle for actually finding paying clients that route. So can you walk us through what that experience was like for you?
It really depends on your niche. And this is where one social media doesn't fit all. Depending on my niche is chiropractors. So for me, they are on LinkedIn. Now, they're also on Instagram, but on Instagram, they are promoting their business. So there's a couple things to consider when you're looking at social media. What is your target audience? Are they on that platform? And if they are on that platform, what is their purpose for being on that platform? So on Instagram, I can never get the chiropractor's attention because they're on there just posting, trying to get attention themselves. Whereas on LinkedIn, they're on there more of learning about things, scrolling more, that type of thing. So I can get in front of them easier over on LinkedIn and I can actually start meaningful conversations because that's the big thing. Obviously, you blast things, you feel like you're talking to an empty void sometimes on social media. But if you can get those conversations started and really start a back and forth with someone and then move it off of that platform, that's where the magic really happens. And for me, that's LinkedIn because my niche hangs out there when they're trying to learn about how to, improve their business or solve problems in their business or things like that.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point that you made. What are they doing on that particular platform? Are they using it, like you said, with chiropractors on Instagram? They're solely just promoting their business. They're not engaging with an audience there. That's pretty smart to be able to discern that fact, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people that will be someone else maybe would see their post and comment and say, hey, if you need a bookkeeper, and they're not even looking at the comments. And if they are, they're thinking that's a weird way of going about trying to sell your bookkeeping services. But I think that's a really good point to make. Now,
and it's important. Sorry, it's important to note when you're thinking of social media, there's two aspects to it. One, where you're just making people realize that you're a valid company. Creating brand awareness. That's where you're posting and making, different posts, reels, whatever you're doing to try to get people to know you exist. But there's also the part that you can't really offload or outsource, and that is the connection. So I spend a lot of time, especially when I'm not really actively marketing my business right this moment. But when I am, I will set aside, 20, 30 minutes a day of going through LinkedIn and interacting with their stuff. So I will congratulate them. I will, interact on their posts. I will follow up with conversations. So that, it is time consuming, yes, but it is meaningful work because now you're deepening that relationship. So there's kind of two aspects to where I'll broadcast post on social media, post on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places. But when I'm going to really create relationships, I do it manually. I go in, message people, interact on their posts, comment, all that kind of stuff.
Very nice. Very nice. So what would you say is going to be the place where bookkeepers will typically find their clients online? Because for you, it was LinkedIn, and you were able to amass you were able to find some chiropractors through Instagram. But what would you say is, in general, the place that bookkeepers will find online leads?
I think the primary, the easy, low-hanging fruit, right, is social media. And what sets people apart is how they're using it. So when you're using social media just to make those posts, you're probably not going to get a lot of interaction. You're not going to get a lot of traction there. If you are using social media with that as your basis, but adding onto it the unique interactions where you're interacting with other people's posts, then you're going to get a little bit more interaction. When you start reaching out to people and doing messaging, you're going to get even more interaction. So it depends on what level of involvement. And then the other piece that people do, and this is where Keepful can really help, is creating things that people want to interact with. So calculators, quizzes, guides that you can provide. What types of free value that people will want to interact with, not just consume, but interact with. And that's where you can then gather their information, and then you can take that conversation offline, because then you'll get, name, email, phone number, that type of thing. And you can follow up with them on a different platform. And now you have multiple touch points through multiple mediums. And the more that you can, obviously, the more touch points you can get, the more you're likely to convert the lead. So it depends. It's usually social media, but it depends on how it's being used, and it depends on what your audience is. Because I have, we have some Keepful members that target construction and landscaping and more of those trades type of businesses. And they do really well with ads. I'm not a huge proponent of ads, just because bookkeeping is you need a lot of trust, right? Because you're dealing with sensitive information. People aren't going to go to Google and the first ad that pops up, that's the bookkeeper they're choosing. They want to vet you. They want to make sure you're doing, you're trustworthy and somebody else they know knows you. So sometimes ads can be throwing spaghetti at the wall expensively. um, so I don't usually recommend going the ads route first, but we have had people that have success with it, and it's usually in the trades industry. So again, it goes back to what's your niche, what's your target audience, and you need to really understand them.
Yes, it's very key to find a niche market and to understand how they interpret marketing and how they find bookkeepers. Now, you mentioned, obviously, Keepful. I have a big bias towards Keepful. I've seen both your demonstrations of it, and I've seen it in other businesses, and it works really great, especially, I'd say, giving a well-rounded place and structure for a bookkeeper to manage their marketing tools, their outreach, like you said, the calculators, the quizzes, and tools. So give, maybe for some of the new members in the audience, a brief overview of Keepful and how it works, and maybe how it's different than other marketing softwares, namely that it's for bookkeepers. But go ahead and give us a little background into why Keepful is the best.
Well, you kind of already tipped our hand a little bit, um, where we are only in the accounting space. So we serve bookkeepers, accountants, CFOs, tax preparers, like just all in that little space. And the beauty is both myself and Kelly, those of us on the team, our own bookkeeping businesses ourselves. So we know it from the inside out. We practice things in our own businesses. And if they don't work, then we're like, we know what works and what doesn't, right? So we're kind of our own guinea pig. And that's kind of what really sets us apart as far as like a lot of marketing companies out there. They'll be like, here, try this, here, try that, here, try this. But bookkeeping and accounting, but mostly bookkeeping, is very unique when it comes to marketing. And I do think the only thing I can keep coming back to is that there's a lot of trust that has to be built. So it is something that is not quick to convert online unless you really know how to find the people that are ready for you. So I think that's probably what sets us apart the most. We also are not a typical software company. A lot of times when you reach out to tech support at a software company, they're going to ask you, the basic, did you restart your computer? Did you unplug it?
Yeah.
They're going to kind of try to dismiss you and pass it off as, oh, it's just a user error. We never try to do that. We will go above and beyond to make sure that we are helping you solve the problem. So really eliminating those tech headaches as much as possible for you, but also then just walking you through whatever you have to do to make sure that your account is running smoothly and accomplishing your goals. So we're very hands-on when it comes to support, and we know the industry. So we can really give you inside advice on, I don't think that's a good idea, or that's a fantastic idea. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's something that can't be stressed enough. If you're in an industry like bookkeeping that demands and requires trust, having real people, real bookkeepers who know the bookkeeping but also know marketing, know how this Keepful system works, being able to interact with you one-on-one, that's absolutely invaluable. One of the things from just my few years and experiences of dealing with Keepful is that you have a lot of tools that you can use to interact with your clients with. There's the calendars, there's the scheduling, the online signatures, website. Can you walk us through maybe sort of an overview of what someone, even with the basic level in Keepful, can get to help them with their marketing, their client outreach, and everything related?
Yeah. So basically, we want to make sure that every time someone sees you, you're portraying the same brand, the same professionalism, the same voice, so that people don't get confused, because a confused mind will not buy. So it is very, very important when you're nurturing that prospect relationship that you keep everything consistent. And that's where Keepful steps in and creates this presence for you that is consistent across the board. So we have the landing page for scheduling that consultation. So if someone, whether you're having a conversation with someone on LinkedIn or someone has reached out to you via email, said, hey, my friend so-and-so needs your help, you have one central place to send everybody that starts your process. So everyone goes through the same automation, the same process, and not only does it streamline it, but it also keeps it really consistent from person to person. So this one person's experience is, hey, she followed up with me every single time. She gave great reminders so that I didn't miss my appointment. And the same thing goes for the next person and the next person and the next person. So it really helps with consistency, and then it helps keep that brand consistent as well. So when they come to buy, they've seen you, they are well aware of, like, they provide value, they follow up, their communication is handled very well, all of those kinds of things. So we help all the way from like ready to schedule that first consult all the way through to signed, paid, and ready for onboarding. We have calendars, forms, signatures, nurture even. So if someone isn't quite ready to move forward yet, we already have a 1-year nurture campaign written. And I personally, my success story with that is I had a client who came through, and 4 months later, she didn't sign her proposal. 4 months later, she emailed me and she was like, hey, I was trying to sign that proposal and it's not working, because I have my proposal set to, draft after 21 days. If they don't sign, they can't access the proposal anymore. And I was like, well, it's been 4 months. And so I went back through a record to see, like, okay, why now? Like, why is she converting now? And it was literally the day after she had received my nurture email. So those nurture emails do work if it's someone that, has just forgotten, or maybe thought she could get, services somewhere else, and then 4 months later realizes, oh, actually I should have gone with this person. But yeah, all the nurture, the follow-up, the automation, all of that is completely done for you. When you sign up, we just get a little bit of information from you, and then we build it all out to make it on brand, consistent to your niche, that kind of thing.
And that's awesome. And I think that that's the big key there. You said consistent. I think the word that I would use too is consolidated. It's in one spot, so you're not having to use a different software for online signatures, or one for calendars, or one for emails and nurturing campaigns. Having it all in one place really, I think, is going to solve a lot of the problems and keep the headaches to a minimum for a bookkeeper. And we all know that bookkeepers aren't really marketers per se. Like, they want to build that one-on-one trust, but broadcasting to the whole world, trying to sell themselves, is not really their bread and butter. So having this system that helps alleviate that in a certain way, where they're not having to come up with everything on their own, they're not having to already overexert themselves in a part of their business that they don't like to do. That's, I think, the biggest thing that Keepful does really well, in my opinion. Now, just because it is fairly new, it's not that new, but it is still, relatively speaking, compared to some other softwares, in a newer stage. What would you say are some of the things that Keepful could do to improve its functions and features in the next year or so?
Well, first of all, we are only as good as the lead that you have coming in, right? So we can't go out there and find people and bring them to you, or we don't offer that service right now. I don't really see us offering that service.
I don't think you should. That's hard.
So we are definitely not a lead generation service. So I want to be very upfront about that, because there will be, agencies or companies out there that do similar to what we do, and they make it sound like they'll get you leads. We do not do that. We do not offer leads, but we will be there every step of the way to make sure your leads convert and your conversion rates are higher than it would be if, you just had a post-it note system on your desk to be like, oh, follow up with so-and-so. They said this on the consult, right? So that, I just want to be very upfront with what we don't do. As far as what we could improve, we get a lot of requests for social media, help with social media postings. And I have that in the works. I was supposed to launch it the end of last year, had a lot of personal things come up and didn't get it done and out. So that is coming up very soon, where we will be offering managed social media. Again, it's just the posting side of it. So all your personal interactions and your messaging and your connections with people, those you'll still need to manage yourself. But as far as like making sure you have something on your page that is, again, consistent with your brand, making sure you have a professional appearance everywhere, we will be offering that. So I'm really excited, because that's something that a lot of people ask for.
Absolutely. And that's another headache that people don't have to deal with anymore. Posting on social media. That's really great. That's really great. Well, with that being said, it looks like I think you've answered all the questions. Is there any final remarks that you have about Keepful or about yourself that you'd like to add to the audience?
Well, I think if we have a few minutes, I'd like to go through some things for anybody listening.
Absolutely.
That is like, where maybe you're trying to find your first client, maybe you're trying to find, is there anything I should be doing to find more clients? So I'd kind of just like to kind of brainstorm some ways that I've seen people finding clients. And Sam, if you've seen or heard in the group of anybody ways that people are getting clients. Of course, the in-person is, if you're looking for your first client, I would say start there, because you can close that know, like, and trust loop a whole lot faster in person. There's just something still, I call me old fashioned, but there's something still about a handshake and you're talking to someone and you decide immediately, I want to work with this person or I don't. So it's a whole lot easier to get that first client converted really fast when you've met them in person. So networking event, calling up your friends, talking to people at church or, school functions, or wherever you see people, talk to people. And it might be a little uncomfortable at first. Okay, I'm going to be honest. It might be a lot uncomfortable at first,
Yeah.
but it moves the needle. So just stay hyper focused on telling everybody you can what you're doing, who you serve. And it helped me to think of it as you're just letting them know in case they know of anybody. And it kind of took the pressure off, because I have a really hard time like trying to talk to somebody and be like, you need my services. But if I was talking to somebody and saying like, here's what I do, if you hear of anybody, let me know. And it took the pressure off for me. That was the way I kind of got over my own fears. But talking to people, and then being aware of like how to let people know you exist. So obviously in person, calling people up, but then there's also that online piece, right? Where you're letting people know you exist. And I'm talking about like share it on your personal pages. So if you already have a following on Facebook, you already have a following on Instagram, let people know. And they're your friends. They not maybe not all your friends own businesses, or maybe not all your friends and family support what you're doing. You just need to share. And the more you share and the more you get pushback too, you'll become more confident in sharing. And that really helps solidify your message. So when you're ready to go to fully online marketing, your messaging content is now perfected to where people understand what you're all about. They know who you are, and they can get a feel for what's really important to you really quickly. The other thing that I've seen is strategic partnerships, and those can be online or those can be in person. Some of my strategic partnerships that I found at the beginning were at those networking events. So I found tax preparers at those networking events and partnered with them. I went and found local CPAs, local EAs. You can do, and you can obviously do that online too. Find CPAs, EAs, tax preparers, whatever. And then also business coaches or people that are already in front of your ideal audience. So people that already have the trust of your ideal clients, that trust gets extended when they've been introduced through that person. So again, go back to that know, like, and trust loop. If you can close it faster, do that. So in person and somebody who already has their trust, piggyback off of that. You're not stealing it, you're piggybacking, right? So if you can find any, even in your own circle of friends, if you know somebody who is a business coach, insurance agents can be really good because they're usually well networked. Real estate agents, they're usually well networked. Like anybody go through your phone contact list or your Facebook list or whatever, anybody that you see is well networked, meet up with them. If you can meet up with them in person or have a conversation with them somehow to let them know what you're doing and see if a lot of times they'll be willing to at least tell other people about you or listen for other people who might need your services. And the more specific you can be in providing them information about what you do or what to look out for, more likely to be able to send people your way. So instead of just saying, hey, if you hear if anybody needs help, let me know, you would want to be more specific and say, hey, if somebody's talking to you about how stressful tax time is this year, send them my way because I can help them get their books in order and they just take it to their tax preparer. If somebody's griping about taking a box of receipts, let me know. I can really help with that, So be very specific in how they can help you, and then they'll be more likely to do it. Because a lot of people want to help. They're just not sure how to help. So that can be a big one. And then I think we've kind of already touched on ads and what I think about those. Like there are some people who are very successful on it, and then there's other people that it doesn't really work. For me, for chiropractors, it did not work at all. And I did it more when I was newer in the chiropractic industry, and come to find out, chiropractors would rather get referrals. They are well networked in themselves because they go to lots of associations and continuing education together. And so they will talk to each other and ask who each other is using before they go to Google or Facebook or whatever to see who's a good bookkeeper, right? So if you can get in, so if you have an industry like that, that's well, like close knit, you would want to get in that society, in that community. I sound like I'm a cult now. Get in. Get in there either by going to conventions, conferences, trying to think how else you would. Business coaches.
No, we'll leave the sleeves in there. Let everyone know that you're human.
But yeah, if you can just get in the group, and then once you're in, then it's a matter of like it just starts, the word of mouth just starts circling around. But it kind of goes back to like knowing your audience again. So like even if you don't have a niche yet, think of this is what I would, if you don't have a niche, this is how I would recommend doing it. Go through your phone contact list, your Facebook list, wherever you have a list of people start reaching out to them. Because when you don't have a niche yet and you don't have much experience, your messaging usually needs tweaking.
Yeah.
Because you're still learning how to present yourself in a way that makes sense to people. So if you start with people that will take the extra time to understand and hear through the message, then you're going to get results still. Once you've done that and you have a couple clients, then think about your favorite client. And yes, we do have favorite clients. Oh, yeah. Think about your favorite client and figure out, okay, where are they hanging out? What are they doing? And just kind of use them as your niche avatar, if you will, because if they're doing it, then there's other people out there that are like them that are doing the same thing. So that's how I would recommend. If you're not really focusing on a niche right now, that's what I would recommend doing. Sorry, I was kind of all over the place for that.
No, you're good. I think people like to hear those sort of bullet point ways they can find clients, because really it's a lot of the same stuff, just in a different setting or context. You're saying things like For some people, ads work and sometimes they don't. But all bookkeepers need to have a message that is curated for their audience. These are all things that people need to hear. They're universal to all bookkeeping business owners, but they have different ways that they're applied. So I think it's really great to hear from you with your experience and with your temperament too. I think that people get hung up on marketing being this sort of dark arts. They have to, be really charming and wordsmiths and, be really good at selling to people, but you don't have to be. You can just say, hey, if someone needs help with their bookkeeping, let me know. And it, like you said, it takes the pressure off of you when you go to networking events. So I think that's really helpful and inspiring to people that are getting into this, and maybe some that have been at it for a while but struggle with the marketing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that about marketing, because there is a lot of noise out there. And you'll have experts saying, hey, do this and never do this. And then you'll have another expert saying, hey, do this and never do that. And it can be very overwhelming and confusing. So do what is working and because of bookkeepers and accounting industry, it is very different. So do what's working in the bookkeeping and accounting industry with what feels authentic to you. Yes, some things are still going to be uncomfortable and some things are going to be very, very scary, and you still will do those. And usually the scariest thing is what's going to move the needle the farthest. So it's still going to be scary and uncomfortable, but you don't want to be inauthentic to who you are and what your brand is, because at the end of the day, it's still person to person. That your relationship is still person to person. Yes, you're selling business to business, but your relationship is person to person. So you don't want to hide yourself so far or redefine yourself to match what's working with marketing. You still want to be authentic in everything that you do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for walking the audience through that, walking